So what's up, everybody? It's Marcus. Please like and subscribe, and please go to ProPhotoEdits.com where you can download my Lightroom presets and Photoshop actions and follow along with the raw file. Today we're going to be editing, and I have a new section of my editing video tutorials where you can go and follow all my video editing in one spot, so you won't miss anything if you happen not to see it here. And I have some before and after Lightroom presets examples and a bunch of new presets for you guys. So let's go ahead and get into it. 105 1.4 versus 85 1.2 today, and then a full edit. Let's do it. Okay, so we're going to edit this one today. This is going to be the just more of a natural beauty type edit. So this is what we came in with. We're going to start here with the preset in my pack. We're going to go to here, and then when we're done in Photoshop, we're going to go here. So just stay tuned and let's have fun. Here's an example of the 105 on the right on the Z7. This is the Nikon 105 1.4e, and this is the oldie but goodie. What's the newest version of the 85 1.2 L2 on the Sigma MC11 adapter on the A7RIII, and this is a pretty close framing representation, and we can look and we can go in and we can see that the 105 is definitely sharper when it hits focus. I mean, the autofocus for the Z7 will be out in a couple weeks, and I'll have a review on that. The 1.2 is actually really sharp when you can nail focus. Now, it doesn't nail it every single time, but just for this illustration, I just put a quick little preset for my pack on here before I start toning or editing or anything, to give you guys you know, anyone who's on the fence about, well, if I already have an 85 that's really fast, do I need a 105 or vice versa? Different people's face look different, you know, different facial structures. How much compression do you need? But for up close portraits like this, I bounce back and forth. That's why I have both. When I'm shooting a portrait session like this, I usually have a 105 on one and the 85 1.2 on the other. Besides the, you know, the slight warmer tones on the Nikon, that's just the way the sensor is. Slightly, you know, cleaner tones on the Sony. The fall off in the hair I found, and on the other side of the face and stuff like that, wherever the focus point is, it'll fall off a lot quicker with the 85. It's just the way there, you know, the focal length is. So let's go into another picture. Okay, so similar situations, pretty much frames, you know, identically. What you will notice with the 85 1.2 is it has a lot of flare that allows the image to, you know, get kind of dreamy and soft, and it just adds a little bit of haze. The 105 doesn't flare out as much. Now, you can get it to flare. I have several images where I've flared it out, but you have to do it on purpose. You have to position the sun and shoot at an angle where the sun's like right behind the subject, which I don't mind doing, and I prefer in this particular sequence the look of the 85, and I know that she's posed the way, you know, you pose a model typically with the shoulder going out of focus, so everything is soft past your focal point. But if we just zoom in on both of these, this is the 105 on the right, you'll see the 105 is still sharper than the 85, but I honestly think it wouldn't be that big of a difference here if the 85 wasn't allowing so much, you know, haze from the flare to come into the picture, which I think is actually a little bit better for me, because once you know, go through and post and do what you need to do, editing skin when it's nice and soft like this, you know, for typical portraits is kind of ideal. It already looks kind of dreamy. I go back and forth between which one I'm going to use and when I'm going to use it. So now we've switched. The 105 is on the left, the 85 is on the right, and I'm just going through some of the model's favorites that she picked. So in this situation, I mean, it's whatever you want. Let's go in and zoom in and look at all this. 105 is definitely sharper for sure. That's, you know, typical 85 1.2 doing what it does, especially on a Sony. But I mean, with the sharpening you do, and you're not going to crop in that far for an image like this in portrait orientation, I just go for the actual image, what looks the best. I would go for 105 on this just because the pose. This is softer, it's dreamy. Typical 85 1.2. For me, I need them both just because of what I do. And I also have another 85 that's a little bit sharper and more boring. But if I need something to definitely be in focus, and I need the 85 compression and just the look of an 85, I have the baddest as well. So I'm not really stuck out there, but it's just a quick representation of both of these lenses before we get into the edit. Alright, y'all, so here's just some behind the scenes on how I was getting this shot, and it wasn't anything big. The sun was going down behind the buildings. I was having it kind of just right behind her head, and I was you know, using the wall on the other side, on the right side, as just a little bit of a bounce when we were directly in the alley. And it's just going to be a tight headshot before we went and did the milkshake shoot, which I'll have coming up shortly. And then I just positioned her upon the wall, and I bounced back and forth between the 105 and the 85. And then we came up with these images. I have no idea why my Osmo mobile was jumping around and acting like it was having a seizure. I had it sitting on top of my other camera, but who knows? Things happen. So alright, y'all, let's start editing this photo. This is the Nikon 105 1.4 at 1.6 on the Nikon Z7. Portrait mode. Eyes are relatively sharp. Yeah, they're sharp. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose a preset from the pack that you guys have. This Kenny Warm Glow. Kenny Clean Glow 2 Warmth. It's a preset that I like to use on images like this, so you can just see before and after. I did a lot of stuff in the curves and the color combos and stuff like that. So it gave us a nice kind of a golden image to start. And if you want your image to be a little more golden, you can adjust the temperature a little bit to the darker side. So I'm gonna stick with mine around like 49.96 is where I'm gonna sit with this, and everything else I'm gonna leave exactly as is. Let's go ahead and edit the rest of this in Photoshop with our actions. Alright, so now that we have this in Photoshop, let's go ahead and do this. It's Apple J or Command J if you're on a PC, and what's going to duplicate our background. And now what we want to do here, since we have this background that's never going to be touched, the first thing I typically do is I go in, I'm going to set this to like 100% and really go into the details and start doing some skin cleanup. Like I just grab the patch tool right here. Inside there lives the other tools that I use sometimes, but go to the patch tool and just grab any blemishes or anything that you don't really want to see, and just drag it away. Make sure you try to drag it to a spot that's clean and also this a bit of a lighter shade. You don't really want to drag to a darker area from a lighter area. And this is just basic skin cleanup. If you're a little bit seasoned already, you can just skip this part, but it's typically pretty easy. So I'm going to skip ahead here, since all I'm doing is grabbing any blemish and just dragging it to a new area. Okay, now to remove stray hair, go to the spot healing brush tool. It's right here, and then make your size just as big as the hair, and then drag over top of it, and it'll kind of remove the hair from the actual picture. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with, you know, just getting rid of all the blemishes and stuff, and I've left a little of the beauty marks and things like that. So this is totally your call. A lot of times what I'll do is, if there's a laugh line, I just go circle it and move it over to the side a little bit, and that'll kind of get rid of that. and but that's up to you and how you want the model to be perceived. There's a slight tiny one right there, and since we're going for more of a beauty edit, I'll just get rid of it, because the next step we're going to smooth all that out just a touch. So now go into your action set and start with the skin. I have them set up like this for you now. So frequency separation, click on that, press play, and it'll tell you select a radius, usually 10. So on a closer portrait like this, yeah, 10 is probably going to be good for this, because you want to see the eyes, but you want them to be a little bit water, you know, look like a painting, like a watercolor. So hit OK. Now open up this folder, PPE, frequency separation. Go to your lower frequency. Always be on the lower frequency, and with your lasso tool, make sure that it's set to whatever you set your radius at. So you want it to be 10 pixels on the feather, since we used 10 pixels as our radius. Now select small areas each time, like the forehead, and move it off the eyebrow, so you're not getting too much of anything that you don't want. So blur, go down to blur. Once you've selected that, go to Gaussian blur, and this is where you select your radius. Now that's obviously insane in fairy tale land. Some people go over the top on this. I don't like that. I would never use that. That's ridiculous. If you see 4.6, you can still kind of see the shadows, and that's what we're going to fix next with the skin perfection. So if you already know how to do this, the next step is going to be where you want to kind of step into this. So what I'll probably do here, just to keep a decent amount of texture there, is like, let's go with the 4.9, and you have the raw file so you can follow along. And now I'm going to go under the eye, around the side of the nose, down the side of the cheek, hit this whole side of the face. And since I'm not overdoing it with this, and I can just stick with the same amount of Gaussian blur, so it'll be the first one on the list down. All right, and I just fixed that a little bit. I never hit the nose when I'm hitting everything else. There you go, Gaussian blur. And a little trick here is, when you do the nose, go down to your Gaussian blur and pull it down like to half of what you had, because the nose is going to be, it's going to tell the, you know, it'll give away anything that you've done this over the top. So filter, Gaussian blur, Gaussian blur. You don't want to do too much. Okay, so there we have it. There's our frequency separation is done, and it's not over the top by any stretch, because you don't want it to be. You don't want this to be like an Instagram edit. This is more of a beauty edit. So next thing we're going to do is, next thing on our list, skin perfection. Run that. Now this is where you're going to spend a little bit more of your time. It's going to give you the directions, but I'm going to walk you through it here. Go to this layer, layer 2, the gray layer. Your brush tool, set your opacity. I like to have it at 70. It says 60. That's what I used to use. Now I use 70. And it just depends on whether I'm using a mouse or if I'm using a tablet. So I'm going to go into about 80% right here. And with the color white, the white is going to be what you're going to draw over the darker areas. So what you're trying to do with this actual tool is, you see how this is dark right in through here, and the gradient isn't as smooth right through here. It's darker, and then it's brighter here and darker on the nose. It's just and around the corners of the lips. If you pull your helper layer off, it's just going to show you what we have. Leave your helper layer on while you're drawing on this, because it's going to actually show you things that your eyes might not pick up on as much. So on your darker areas, just go ahead and take your time and just paint them down until they're almost, when you see this lighter area goes into this darker. Just bring the bring the transition to where you can almost not see it. The more you do on this, the heavier the edit's going to look. So I'm going to speed this up, but all we're doing here, guys, is making the darker areas blend into the lighter areas. You want to hit, you know, the middle of the forehead, on the sides of the nose, under the eyes a little bit, definitely under the lips on the corners where it's darker, and just make them fade into one another. So from lighter to darker without the little step in between, just a nice smooth gradient. And this usually takes me about, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes. This is the longest part of my edit, but since I'm talking over top of it, it's obviously going to take longer to explain it, but that's what we're going to do. So 30%, this is before we started doing our skin perfection action. Before, after, before, after. You can see how we limited some of the distracting areas. So now that's what we have: before, after, before, after. What we're going to do here is the next step, dodging method 2. Now once you run this action, it's going to automatically select your dodge tool for you. Your shadows should be, your range should be set to shadows. Your exposure should be a 4 or 5. I usually use 4. Sometimes I use 5. It's not that big of a difference. And the first pass of this, what I typically do is this. Let's go back into like 70%. Anywhere where I see it's still a little bit darker, this is the last thing we're going to do on the skin before we get into the cool stuff. I just lighten it. And you can even go down to like 3 on your exposure if you really want to. So it's not so heavy. And you don't want it to be blotchy here, so you're just like using your eyes and saying, okay, this is still a little bit darker. I'm gonna kill that gradient a little bit more. It's a 3-step process, but it equals realistic skin. If you want. If you don't want, just go overboard with it. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna run this action one more time. Dodging method 2. Leave everything as it is, and what we're gonna do, I'm gonna go back up to 5 here on the exposure. Make sure you're on your black, on your layer mask, and what you're gonna do is just this. This is how we dodge. I'm gonna hit the eyes one time on both sides. I'm gonna hit the cheeks maybe like once, twice, 3, once, twice. You don't want to overdo this. Once, twice through the nose area here, on the chin, just wherever your highlights are naturally falling. You see she has some on her chin. I hit the lips a little bit extra. I'll go like 4 or 5 passes, just very small on the brightest parts of the lips, down the edges of the nose, under the eyes a bit, corners of the mouth. And this is where, again, you need to use your discretion, but it's going to pop your image out, and depending on how much you do and how much you don't do, it's going to be a light edit or a heavy edit. It just depends on how much you want to dodge. But this is a great tool that I've set up for this. Now right here on the forehead, sorry, I selected the pen tool. Right here on the forehead, I'm going to give it one more, and through that area, PP skin, pink skin tones. Run this, and this is going to just give your skin tones just a little bit more of a pink glow. And if it's too much, you can bring the opacity down a bit. I'm probably going to leave it there at about 12% on this. Before we get into the rest of the dodge and burn and the pop cheeks and stuff, let's go ahead and the next step I like to do is PP color pop. Run that. Just add a lot of color back into our image, and if it's too much, you bring it down. This isn't our final toning or anything like that. Contrast pop. This is a pretty big deal here. This is going to give your image a pretty substantial amount of contrast. I might back this down just a touch, depending on how punchy I want my edit or how airy I want it. Alright, now let's hit the eyes. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our eye folder, PPE eye actions, and eye sharper. Run that. 75% opacity, flow to 100%. White brush. So go to 75, flow to 100. Draw over the eyes and the eyelashes on the top and bottom. Just like that. Alright, so here you go. Before, after, before, after. You see how I sharpened the eyes up? Okay, that's what you need. Next one on the list is eyes and smile whiter, PPE. Don't get sloppy. Now, all same thing, white brush, but you're going to be at 100% opacity, 100% flow. You want to make sure you don't go outside of the whites of the eyes. And what all this is going to do is it's going to remove the color cast from the whites of the eyes. And use your eyes when you do this, and teeth. See, I mean, it's a golden day, it's a golden reflection. Shadows in her mouth. Now you can make her teeth white again, and you have to just use your eyes when you back out and say, how much cast do I want to leave in her eyes? I don't want it to look like she's an alien where her eyes and teeth are glowing now, because that's not natural. See, before, after, before, after. We've removed the cast in there. So let's go back out to 30% where most people are going to be looking at it. And I mean, that looks really good to me. I mean, it's not overdone for this particular image. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the eyeshadows action. Run that. Click on your black mask here and set your opacity to 25%, flow to 100, white brush. And the thing that a lot of people don't do is you sharpen the eyes. We're gonna color tone the eyes and brighten the certain parts over here in a second. But under the eyes, depending on how much mascara the person has on, you want to do like one pass of this, just to bring a touch of contrast there to the eyes, because it'll throw the viewer off if they're saying your eyes are super punchy, but there's no contrast around the eyes at all. It just will make them stick out too much. And then you can back out here in a second and say that's enough or that's too much. And if it's too much, I have a mine set at 61. Bring it down to like 46. Okay, I brought mine down to 42. I think that's good. Alright, so let's get into the cool stuff. First, we're going to go to Eye Enhance PPE. This is the first step here. This is a two-step process. So run that action on your dodge tool. Exposure at 5%. Range is set to shadows with white. And it's even going further. It's going to like 120%. So you see how, there's not a lot of catch light here because I had her backlit, because it's just prettier that way. So what you want to do with this first step is this. The areas in the eye where you can see there's a little bit of a brighter, like around the iris and certain areas where it's bright, hit the catch light, the reflection, which is probably from a building down the way, and underneath the eye is it's not flat, it's more like a circular deal. So if light comes in on one side, it has to leave at the other. Comes in on the top, it'll leave on the bottom. So just draw a little bit under the bottom, a little bit where the actual catch light is coming in, and if there's not a perfectly round catch light, just draw where the brighter parts are. We've lit up the eye a little bit. Next thing we're going to do is brown eye enhance. Our eyes are brown. I have green, blue, brown, which are your typical eye colors that you're going to want to use here that I've made for you guys. Let's go back up to 120. Pull this down, and I'm going to run the brown eye enhance. Click on your black mask. You have your dodge tool here. Now what this is going to do is, where all the eye is brown, just draw over top of it a little bit. You're going to have to use your own judgment here to see where you want. And if you have a person that has like hazel brown eyes, you can pull the green eye up too and draw in certain areas too. But I'm just trying to give the eye a little bit of color. So there you go. Now we've got brown. So let's go to eye enhance and the brown and make a folder out of it, and we'll see before, after. That's with the eye enhance and with the brown color. Now what I want to do typically is dodge and burn, and I'm only just burning here. Now on this layer here, you're going to grab your white brush again, reset these, make it white on top, and go to, I'm going to go to actually 4% opacity, 100% flow. And this is where you don't want to get too crazy, right? Underneath the chin, I always start there. And I'm just going to do a pass of, actually with black, I'm sorry, because dodging would be white. Black is going to be our burning. It's just going to put a little bit of shadow in there on the sides of the nose. One pass. You can hit the top of the head here, where the hair meets the face. Over here, underneath the nose, the nostrils, maybe under the eye, so this side of the face, underneath the lip, anywhere where there's a shadow. And it has a lot to do with how your model is positioned, your subject, whoever, where the shadows are going to fall. But there's typically one underneath the cheek. Over here on this side, there's always usually one under the neck. And you can come down here and hit the sides of the arms, because you don't want all the contrast to be on the face and none anywhere else. The dark spots in the hair, you add a little bit of contrast there. And you just have to use your eye. And don't be afraid to say, I've gone too far. Or it's easier to go too far than it is to not go far enough. And just right there on the sides of the cheeks, just real quick. Okay, so now we've added a little bit of contrast in there. And I'll say that once we sharpen this, it's going to make that even more so. So I'm going to bring that down just a touch. All right. Okay. One more thing I'd like to do here is go back into, I'm always just looking at the image, and I want to give you guys the full rundown. I don't want to just BS you and say, this is how I do it. I'm done. You'll figure this out just by watching. So what we're going to do right here is go back into the skin and go back to dodging method 2. Run that again. It'll select your tool for you. Click on your black layer mask, and I'm just going to draw where the highlights in the hair is. You see how it's pretty in this backlit behind the hair? Let's bring that out a little bit. Let's bring out you don't want all the highlights to be on the face. You want other highlights other places. I'm going to draw here on the arm a touch. Here on the chest, but where this line is coming down of the highlight in her hair, I'm going to accentuate that a bit. Definitely where the backlight is. Back of the dress, where the light's hitting that. Definitely in that little pocket. And now, you see what I mean? It doesn't put the spotlight right on the face and say, wow, it's dodge and burn. Even though it doesn't really look that dodge and burn to me. It just feels a little bit more natural now. Alright, so let's wrap this up. The last couple things I'm going to do here are, I'm going to go back up into the PPE color grading action set, and we're going to do 2 things. We're going to go to, actually 3. We're going to go into shadow toning. I start with that first. Run that. And this is to taste, but this is pretty powerful. So it's going to apply image and make a mask, and only allow these colors to go into the darker points. We're going to tone the shadows. So open up this folder here where you got your mask it made for you, and turn all of these colors off. So now it's not doing anything. And what you want to do is just choose a color. These are your primary colors that you like your shadows to be. Purple looks really pretty in this. You know, it's kind of dreamy. Can't ever lose with blue. And I'm going to go into the blues, and I'm going to make the blues a bit darker. because this will give you just a touch of matte, a touch of air. This is really important. Maybe just a touch darker there. All right, so off and on. Can you see that? Now the next thing we're going to do is overall tone, then we're going to sharpen, we're going to be done. So now we're going to go back into complete image toning, PPE, and this is how we're going to get just the overall. It's like the glue, glues everything together. Same deal, turn all these colors off once your folder opens up with your complete image toning PPE right here. Now what I typically like to do on an image like this, where it's like a warmer image, I'll maybe use the yellow, right? So I'll turn the yellow on, and you just want to look at the skin tone, and you can go click inside the yellow here, and it'll bring up your color picker, and you can mess around in here and choose your yellow. You see what I mean? That's nice and warm. I will stick up around this area. Now I have it set to soft light as the blending mode here. What you can do is go to overlay if you want, and go between the two and see which one you like better. It's a slight difference. Sometimes I use soft light, sometimes I use overlay. On this particular image, I'm probably going to use overlay. And now we've got even more of a golden tone, and I really do like that. And now what we want to do is this. We want to run stage sharpening, and this is how you're going to sharpen your image, and not make it crunchy, but make it sharp. This is really powerful. I've explained this a lot of times, but I do this every time like I'm doing it for the first. It's going to create 4 different layers to sharpen, and it's going to sharpen them the least on the darkest. On the second darkest, it's going to do a little bit more, and it's going to stage it all the way up until the sharpest part is going to be the brightest. So the eyes, the nose, the hair, where it wants to draw your attention to. Now open this up. Don't mess with any of this as far as like adjusting your opacity for each one of these. Just leave them the way they are. Now let's go in and I'll show you. This is going to pull everything together. Off, on, off, on. And it's sharp, but it's not weird. See how perfect this looks? Pretty, nice, natural. And like I said, this is a long video, but if I wasn't talking, I can do this with my eyes closed, and you can too. It takes me 15 minutes at most, maybe 20 if I'm experimenting and stuff like that. So I'm gonna grab all these layers from the top to where we started with our background and show you what we did. Apple G, group those together. That's where we started. That's where we finished. That's where we started. That's where we finished. Look how pretty that is. And I mean, it wouldn't have taken much time at all if I wasn't talking, but I want to actually teach you guys. Everyone who's purchased my stuff, I'm going to stand behind you guys and help you out. And I'm going to continue to learn and continue to teach. So probably see this photo on my Instagram. Thank you guys for editing along with me. And in a couple days, I have another video, and we'll just keep it going. All right, thank you guys. It's Marcus. See you later.